Hi, welcome to AUA's Focus Series, a podcast channel by the American University of Armenia's Media Lab. My name is Laura Prokic. I'm a lecturer at AUA's College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I'm also the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator for AUA. And this is my co-host.
Hi, I'm Anahit Simonyan. I'm gender and human rights expert at the Acopian Center for the Environment in the scope of the project Waste Policy in Armenia. I'm also the director of Human Rights Research Center. I'm a researcher and feminist activist, and I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Thank you for being here. So as we know, March 8th is International Women's Day. And so we're here today to talk a little bit about what is going on at American University of Armenia and beyond in terms of gender equality and gender equality work.
So what's going on?
That's a good question. So at American University of Armenia, we're actually doing a number of things right now, but I think it's important to acknowledge that when we talk about gender equality, that it's not something that happens in a vacuum. So gender equality and gender exists within a sort of web of complex interactions of other things like race and class and ability, etc. So when we say we're working towards gender equality, we have to work on all of those things sort of at the same time. And that's kind of the approach that we're taking at AUA. So we tend to use the phrase diversity, equity, and inclusion, which comes from the American higher education context of being an American-style institution. We take the lingo from there often. So we've been focusing on first the creation of what we call a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. And this came about during our reaffirmation of our accreditation process. We are accredited by a accrediting body in the United States. And they suggested that we focus on these topics, although the roots of this work, stem to before that time. So we did sort of a comprehensive research project. I was involved in the team that did this work. We did focus groups. We looked at survey data. We looked at our policies and our procedures to sort of identify what are the unique things that we need to work on in terms of gender equality and many other factors. And we did develop a plan. It's a 2-year plan, and it will be publicized on our website pretty soon. The first thing on there was to designate somebody who's responsible for diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and that would be me. Just so happens that that's me. And we also now have a committee that's comprised of faculty and staff and students that will be sort of carrying out this diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI plan. So that's step one.
Why do you think that is important? I think it might be interesting to contextualize why this is a process that you see as something needed and necessary, especially within the academia.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it's necessary for any institution to sort of look at two things: their internal environment, right? How they are behaving equitably and fairly within their internal environment, but also how that translates into their role in society. And so American University of Armenia as an institution of knowledge creation, has an obligation both to make sure that the way we do education and the way we do knowledge creation is done in an equitable and fair way. And then, we have a greater role to play in society, educating future generations, preparing the next workforce, and so on. And we have an obligation to society to make sure that we are setting a good example and creating equitable futures.
So what you do basically? What's your role supposes?
Right. So it's focused right now on carrying out this diversity, equity, inclusion plan. And I can talk about a few of the things that we've done so far. One of the first things we did was to undertake a pay equity study. And so we started with faculty to see if there were some significant systematic differences in salary for male and female faculty. We have right now, it's about 60% male faculty, 40% female faculty, which is pretty good if you look worldwide. That's a pretty good number, reaching parity, sort of in line with global trends in that regard. And globally, we do see differences, pay differences across sectors, across cultures, across countries, and within academia. It's pretty standard to find gender-related differences in pay. Our analysis actually ended up looking pretty good. We could say we didn't find statistically significant differences in pay or compensation related to gender or sex. But it's something that we needed to undertake. We needed to know whether that's there or not, and we need to keep paying attention to it in the future. Other things that we've done, I'm currently working right now actually on a staff version of that. So looking at our staff composition looks different than our faculty composition. So we have about 70% female staff and 30% male staff, which is obviously sort of the inverse of our faculty composition. And we haven't completed that analysis yet, but the preliminary results sort of indicate that we also don't have like major discrepancies there. We may have some sort of occupational segregation going on where males and females tend to be in different types of jobs at the university, but across the board, we don't have sort of significant gender pay gaps, which is, again, great. And when you look at the overall national and international context, it's, I think it's something that we should be proud of, but we shouldn't get too comfortable. We should keep looking and monitoring and making sure that equities are happening in other areas as well, not just pay. What are some other things? I would say the other really significant thing that we're working on related to the diversity, equity, inclusion plan is training across the board. So we're providing workshops and trainings for faculty, staff, and students on a variety of topics to promote a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment. So, for example, we're working on doing mandatory sexual harassment trainings for all these different segments of our community. For faculty specifically, we are doing trainings related to inclusive pedagogy, implicit bias, how to support students with disabilities in the classroom, how we diversify our curriculum and promote greater equity through education. So all of these are going on right now. I would say those are maybe two of the more important, some of the more important projects that we're working on right now for diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I wanted to mention something is that we're focusing a lot on our internal environment, but American University of Armenia is also engaged in a number of projects in the community, research projects and more active-based projects that are actively working to promote gender equality within the wider society. And you're actually a part of one of those. So I wanted to chat about that a little bit. We're working together on a project called Waste Policy Armenia, which is funded by the Swedish Institute, Swedish International Development Agency. And it's a program largely geared towards waste management and reforming the waste management sector in Armenia, but it actually has built in a gender equality and human rights component. So maybe you could speak a little more about the project and how gender and human rights fits into waste management.
Absolutely. Actually, when you were talking, I was thinking about the importance of really combining institutional work with the content-related work and the content creation, and making sure that rights-based approach and gender sensitivity are also reflected in the products that we create, be that a research or any other academic or educational content or product or process. And I think Waste Policy Armenia is a very good example of responsible integration and mindfulness about gender and human rights aspects of any issue around us. So basically, I can definitely say that there is no issue in the society around us. There is no sector. There is no type of relationship between people, between citizens and the state that do not have or can go without human rights and gender perspectives. Waste management sector, I think, is one of the areas where maybe typically very few people would instantly relate that field to human rights or gender-related concerns, but there are plenty of them actually. And I think the work that we do at the moment, of course, this is a big project and it has different components, starting from legislation creation of new legislation on EPR, extended producer responsibility, introducing new waste sorting system in Armenia. So there is a lot that is going on within the project per se, but every component needs to also go through human rights and gender proofreading, let's call it like that. So our team, gender and human rights team within the project, make sure that human rights aspects are not left out from the work that we do. And waste management sector is quite an interesting area where we have multiple issues related to, let's say, right to health, can have issues related to right to health, labor rights, right to clean and safe environment, public health issues. From gender perspectives, we know that waste management practices start from home. They start from our habits and the way that we see our daily activities. And they are gender too, and pretty much.
Of course.
Yes. So how we define waste, what littering habits we have, they also differ. Men and women and children can have different perceptions of waste depending on their perceptions of their roles in the society, which are pretty much gendered. So what is the importance of this discussion is making sure that we are aware of those gender differences that very often come from gender stereotypes, but at the same time, we do not reinforce them. So, for instance, when we talk about waste management or waste sorting practices at the household level, we do not see them as something that is a duty of a woman whose gender role, stereotypical gender role in the society, supposes her to take care of the majority of the household's activities. So our messaging, the way we talk about waste sorting, the way we portray it in media through different messaging campaigns, it doesn't reinforce those gender stereotypes and actually brings the perspective that this is the duty and the responsibility of every member of the family, and then each and every member of the family, of the society. If we go further, then in the community, we would see that there are littering practices that are typical for men and women. And this also needs to be addressed. What habits do we have that go along with our perceptions of our gender roles and gendered behavior? If we go even furthermore, we would go to decision-making and governance, waste governance, and we would have a lot of representation issues. Are women represented in the sector, especially in the decision-making cycles? And what are the typical areas of involvement or employment within the waste sector where we would see women working nowadays? And I don't think there are many of them. So it's also one of those maybe more or less typically like masculine work environments and sectors. So there is a lot to address, both from rights perspective, gender equality, and actually intersectionality, as you truly pointed out at the beginning. When we talk about community participation in waste sorting decision-making processes, we talk about participation of elderly population, we talk about child participation, we talk about accessibility and availability of infrastructure for all groups of the society, for persons with disabilities. So there is a lot to unpack. And I'm glad that we're actually moving forward. We already have a baseline assessment in this regard that gives a very interesting picture of some patterns and behaviors and perceptions in the community level in Sevan. And this year, we're moving forward with many of our stakeholder capacity building meetings and discussions and bringing this rights-based and gender-sensitive perspective of waste management into the agenda of expert community, non-governmental organizations, academia. So it's an interesting and rewarding process, I might say.
Definitely. And being a part of it has been a really unique experience. I'm wondering, do the baseline research and the stakeholder sort of meetings suggest any particular activities or areas that need particular attention in the waste management sector in terms of gender equality and human rights?
I think one of the maybe very crucial aspects and areas remain actually equal participation in the process. And when we talk about process, we talk about the process both on individual, family, and household levels, and community and governance. So recently, for instance, we were in Sevan meeting with one of the schools, and the students there last year, I think, had a campaign that was aimed to show how polluted is the area around them. They were trying to collect some of the waste around, some of was not possible to collect for them. So they were doing a lot of awareness raising, and they were presenting their project. And maybe after an hour of discussion, and so the girls of the group were sitting on one side and the boys on the other side, and each was presenting some of the bits of the campaign. And then some of the girls from the group were looking at me like the whole 1 hour of very different discussions, because there were representatives of school governance bodies, teachers from different schools, and our whole team. So there were different layers of conversations that were going on. And then after an hour, one girl told me, "Can I ask you something?" And I approached, and she was like, "What shall we do when every time when we clean the classroom, boys just stand and watch, and we're the only ones who are being told to do so? And then when we do our community cleaning work, the same happens again there, and we don't like it." So this is the daily level of gender lenses about our attitude towards the spaces that we are in. Classroom is a space, community is a space, home, house is a space. And then the way we see our roles and responsibilities within those spaces matter, and they really also matter in the context of waste management. Because all the practices of waste sorting, waste reduction are about us being in the environment, and also demanding from the government, from the municipality to manage the space accordingly, and to be part of decision making, how the space shall be managed, what decisions shall be made in the context of waste sorting or waste reduction. So this can be one of the examples of the work that we have planned for this year. We will be having meetings with schools. We will be doing awareness raising campaign, and we really see the young generation there as having a very important role for awareness raising in a gender sensitive and rights sensitive manner.
Really important work. Not easy work, but important work. It never is easy, but we have to keep trying. So we've been talking a lot today about, gender equality, for thinking of International Women's Day and promoting gender equality. And you asked me earlier, like, why is it important to do this work at a university? And I just wanted to sum up in our last minute or two here. What do you see from your perspective in the broader scope of the work that you do? What do you see as AUA's role in promoting greater gender equality in Armenia and human rights?
Absolutely. As an academic institution, I totally agree with you. There is a social responsibility issue here. I think academia, any academic institution, has a social responsibility. And the way that we process social issues through teaching, through research, through academic communication, through knowledge creation is crucial. And it's silly to think that we can deal with human rights issues on the level of legislation and policy making without dealing with the approaches, perceptions, and without addressing the kind of knowledge that we produce and we see as fit for our society. So I think knowledge creation and having rights-based approach in education and to education, which is a separate discussion, and we can maybe have an opportunity to talk about that too. What does it mean to have a human rights-based approach to education and within education? But it is essential, and I think the processes that have started this year at AUA and the work that you have been doing for me personally as a member of a larger AUA community is very inspiring and important, and I feel good to be in the environment where these processes are moving forward under your leadership.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's definitely not only me, and I have to say that the work that we're doing here at AUA can't happen without the larger context and people like you and your organization also working out in the field on projects and in many other avenues towards the same goal. So I'm looking forward to working more together on all of these projects and
Likewise.
more. Yeah. Thank you, Anahit, for being here. And thank you for tuning in to our Focus Series episode where we were talking about gender equality at American University of Armenia and beyond.